What is happening, Michael people? It is a Wednesday, the live stream, as you know, to be as it is here on April the 9th. And I am just grateful and thankful to be here to present another one for you and the masses. Welcome again. This is the Wednesday live stream, which I have each and every week. And let me just pull up some graphics here before I get commenting to everything that's going to take place here over the course of the next hour change, somewhere around there. But the J Reels podcast, which I have Mondays and Thursdays, and then today being the live stream, this is one that I always look forward to because not only am I doing it live, but also to interact with those who do hop on board throughout the course of the next 60 minutes plus. And that's why I am grateful, because the podcast I just recorded, I posted, which I love, and I've been doing it for 7+ years. But this now, as I'm trying to get into a bit of a groove when it comes to doing these live streams, and hopefully as time goes on, just like anything in life, right? It's just a gradual process to get to a point where come one, come all, that everybody will jump on board. We'll be back and forth in the chat room. And of course, this is why I do this, not only just for the love, but to get you guys and gals involved. And for those who are watching, some housekeeping before I begin. For those who are watching, let's pull up the first graphic. Welcome to the live stream. It is April the 9th in the year of our Lord 2025. Northeast, it's feeling like winter. Wake up this morning, it was 32 degrees. Last night, it was in the 20s with the wind chill. And even though the calendar has turned to April, 9 days in, and spring has been, 2.5 weeks right now. It'll be 3 weeks tomorrow, because 3 weeks ago, tomorrow was the start of the NCAA tournament. And knowing that we've had a smattering of days that's been warm, and I know you don't really care about this, but the only reason why I bring it up is because spring, it's here. It's official. Mother Nature, you can start letting it get a little bit warm in these parts. Am I asking for 75, 77 degrees? As nice as that would be, but I get it. That's a little bit too much to ask for right now, but just give me upper 60s, how about anywhere between 68 and 72? That'd be nice. And I get it, that's not the average this time of year, but can we at least get into the 60s? Because let's have some fun for a second. Why not? Bring it up. Not that I'm trying to be weatherman by any stretch, but here we go. Over the course of the next few days, and a lot of rain in the forecast, which I get it also, here's what we got. For those watching. Now, I know it's probably a little bit backwards, whatever. So, I mean, it's just a disgrace. So when you're looking at 48, 50, 44, etc. I mean, it's just a disaster. So that's what I'm looking at right now. And I got some comments in the chat that I'll get to in a second. But for the weather, we can get a little bit of improvement. And what was the temperature right now as it is? And you're going to have some baseball games being played this afternoon, especially at Citi Field. The Mets will look to sweep the Miami Marlins. 41 degrees right now. And the high's going to be 48. This isn't baseball weather. This is more suited for football in mid-November. So that's what we have here, 50, 50, 44. I mean, it's just a joke. But anyway, I digress. Let me move it along here as we touch on a few things. Let's get to some comments here. Oh, my guy, Val, waving hi, a big Warrior fan. And he likes this live. I appreciate that too, Val. Let's see what we got here. Giants lost 2 games to the Reds. Giants play the Yankees this upcoming weekend, so they're going to come to the Bronx to play the Bombers, who the Bombers are looking to get out of Detroit with a win today, as they lost the first 2 games of their series in the Motor City. And then, of course, Golden State did win yesterday. Golden State looks like they're going to be part of the body of work in the Western Conference, not worrying about a situation where they're going to be in the play-in tournament. And I'm going to get to the NBA in a second, but I want to get to a couple of other things. So, housekeeping. Those that are watching on the replay, please leave a comment. I've said this all along. So if you can, after watching the replay, or even while you're watching it, type in a comment, send it to me, something that you disagree with, something you want to debate with what it is I have to say over the course of the next hour. Please do so. So I don't want you to think that if you're watching a replay, like, oh, what, I'm going to leave J Reels a comment. If something that irks you or something that you agree with, please feel free to do so, and I'll be more than happy to follow up. So that's number one. And for those who are here, just like Val B has just shown, once you're online and joining me, please share your thoughts in the chat room, whatever it may be, whatever sport. Now, of course, I'm going to take them after I get through the various topics that are going to be a part of this live stream. And trust me, so whatever it is, even if it's been a few minutes and I haven't responded, I'll make sure to get back to you on that. So please just leave your comment and I'll be more than happy to follow up and even post it here on the live stream. Now, to wrap up the housekeeping, I don't know if anybody was aware, but for those who follow me on this channel here on YouTube at JReels, so if you haven't subscribed, please do so. What are you waiting for? Subscribe, get that bell to notify whatever it is that I put up, whether it's a short that I usually do every day. I usually post a couple a day, although the sports world has been kind of quiet right now, although it's going to pick up big time here as we get into the weekend and beyond, and with a few of the newsworthy items that I'll discuss. But I posted a vlog yesterday. I went out to Citi Field. If you watched the live stream last week, I was talking about it at the very end of the live stream. I went to Citi Field opening day on Friday, where the Mets played the Blue Jays, and I took the pulse of a couple of handfuls of Met fans just to see where they're at after a 3-3 start, and thinking with the big picture, knowing that the expectations are through the roof with this Met team this year. And I wanted to see whether or not that they were either, like yours truly, cautiously optimistic, or they were just overtly optimistic. And a lot of the Met fans that I know, that I'm close to, they sadly are cynical, jaded. They wait for the other shoe to drop. That's not to say they're not positive about their team, but we're always waiting just to get that knock over the head as Met fans waiting for a World Series victory for the first time since 1986. We're going on 39 years, people. But it was, well, you're going to have to watch for yourself. I almost gave it away. And I also have a surprise guest that joined me, which was just mind-blowing because he was a former podcast guest dating back to the pandemic. And in fact, in the height of the pandemic, almost 5 years to the day when it was released, and I already had the interview in the can at this point, but he was on the podcast then, and I happened to bump into him at Citi Field on Friday and actually had a few minutes to where we chopped it up about his Major League Baseball career, about his post-career, what he's been up to, also getting his thoughts on the 2025 Mets. So we cover that all in a span of a few minutes. So you definitely want to check out that vlog. Just posted it yesterday. You'll probably see it there at the top of the feed when it comes to either the recent stuff that I posted, or all you have to do is go to the sports vlog tab, click on that, watch it. It's 20 minutes, but it's good. Entertaining, fun, couple of laughs. I even have a little bit of a miscue toward the back part of the vlog, but you'll get all that. If you haven't watched it, please do so. I would sincerely appreciate it. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Share it with all those that are out there, and I plan to do more of those in the weeks to come, as well as some lifestyle content. So that's what's big about the channel. Not only do I talk sports, go a little bit in depth about yours truly, get to know me a little bit more, on top of just the whole process of doing this podcast, etc., when you follow me on the channel. All right, all the housekeeping to the side. Let's get into some NBA headlines, as we are now just 4 days away from the end of the season, and there's no games on Saturday. So technically you have tonight, tomorrow, Friday, and Sunday, with Friday and Sunday a full slate, 15 games, all 30 teams that will be playing. And it's interesting because, as I talked about on the podcast Monday, and if you haven't watched it or listened to it, please, again, you can see it on the ticker scrolling at the bottom. Every so often, not only do you get the podcast, whether it's for the visually inclined here on YouTube, but if you want to listen to it, take me with you on your commutes, whether it's running errands, at the gym, whatever, Apple, Spotify, and the website is jreels.com. So if you want to even know a little bit more about me, you can go to the website as well. But for this final few games here, before we get into the play-in, which will start a week from yesterday, because Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is the whole play-in scenario. But for the NBA, the intrigue is out west, without question. And before I even get into the scenario regarding the 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 seeds, where all those are just one big jumbled mess, and how this is going to play out here between now and Sunday, who's going to make it into the body of work as far as the 4 through 6, because 7 and 8 means you're going to play against one another in a play-in before you can advance, or if that loser plays the 9-10 winner. But the big story that's going to take place, and I can even go back to last night in Oklahoma City with Luka Doncic as he got ejected in the game where he had gotten into it with a heckling fan, but because he was in the vicinity or within range of the official that was there and thinking that the official was talking, or Doncic was talking to the official as they had made a jumper and he was backtracking or backstepping his way to the defensive side of the court and called the heckling fan a four-letter word that I could repeat here, but I'll keep it clean because normally I keep my podcast, I keep everything clean. And that'd be an interesting thing for those who are on. Not to say I'm going to get profane every 5 seconds because I'm not doing that for shock value or whatever. But should I be, not necessarily I'm being inauthentic by not cursing, but I just figured, hey, I don't know who's watching this. And I understand that if I'm going off on a rant, that if I let out a four-letter F-bomb or another four-letter word, or I happen to curse just from the body or from the feeling, from the gut, that I'm just getting my point across. And sometimes I get it when you swear, and sometimes when it comes across meaningful and impactful in that moment, that's when it's almost accepted. But I'm just not going to sit here and throw a bunch of profanities just for the hell of it. That's not going to be me. But he came out, Luka, toward the fan, but in the process, the stray got to the official who teed him up, threw him out of the game, and Luka got a technical early in the game. That was certainly a bad job by the official. He should have known better, but I get it. It was shouted at in his direction. Maybe he should have said, wait a minute, was that directed toward me? Because again, when Luka made the shot, he wasn't fouled on the play, and we know Luka has this, for whatever reason, every 5 seconds, he's always bitching and moaning to the refs. So it's a situation where I'm sure the ref caught that stray and said, oh, wait, you're going to get me? Well, I'm going to get you back. You're getting an early shower. All right, that's unfair. But the big story tonight, and I'll put it here on this headline there at the bottom of the screen, Luka Doncic returns to Dallas for the first time since the trade there on February 2nd. Remember, he played against the Lakers there last month in L.A., in which he had a triple-double, did not play well in the game, but did record a triple-double against his former mates. But now he goes back, quote-unquote, home for the first time, and it's going to be no surprise. It is going to be an outpouring of love. It is going to be just one big giant embrace by the fan base. I'm sure if they could have sold 100,000 tickets, they could have played this game in the Jerry's World, AT&T Stadium with the Cowboys. And you know what? That would be brilliant on the Maverick side. Of course, there's no way they're going to do that because they have to build out the basketball court, etc. But if this game was going to be played in Arlington, where the home of the Cowboys, they would have sold 300,000 tickets. And they would have tried to fit people even on the roof, looking down, opening up the top so that people could get a look at Luka Doncic in his first ever game as a member of the Lakers in Dallas. And you know it's going to be emotional. You know it's going to be just a love fest. And I tell you, if I'm Nico Harrison and the owner, Patrick Dumont, I would be nowhere near in the building. And if they happen to be there, whether they be on the sidelines or in a luxury box, etc., if the camera shows them once, and I know they're not going to do that because then they're putting the GM and the owner on the spot, which is going to be a vociferous amount of boos. And I'm sure they're not even going to mention either one of those two names on a loudspeaker by the PA announcer throughout the course of the evening because they are just going to be denigrated and they're going to be pretty much public enemies number 1 and 1A if they were to be mentioned there tonight in the building. But this is going to be one of the more rare occasions that a player who is well revered is going to show up and the arena as an opponent to have the team. And generally, yeah, you do get the video montage and you do get ovations and things of that nature. I get it. Klay Thompson went back to Golden State, and not that it was any fault of the ownership by just letting Klay Thompson go. They just felt like, well, we're not going to re-sign him. But of course, he had the overwhelming amount of accolades, and deservedly so. But this one is going to be ratcheted up times 10. Because this was to no fault of Luka Doncic. It's not as if he wanted out of Dallas. It's not as if there was a disconnect between he and the fans. So to think, and they'll probably spend the night there considering they had the game last night in Oklahoma City. So whatever is happening right now, if they do have a shoot around after a night game, or I'm sure he's probably going to a local spot right now, maybe even for some coffee or wherever he goes to get a morning breakfast. So this is going to be one that everybody's going to have their eyes glued to the sets tonight. Me, I'll just tune in to see, and the ovation is going to be what we expect. There isn't going to be anything that we could imagine of it being with any vitriol or with any disgust. Yes, directed toward the ownership and the front office, understood, but toward the player, that's not going to be the case, as I'm sure the Maverick fan has just been waiting for this moment just to show. And I'm sure there's going to be a ton of signs there, too, against the front office, as you've seen a lot of the protests outside of the arena there at the time that this trade was commenced at that time. And this was back in the early part of February. But, yes, that is going to be big news tonight. And the Lakers looking to get themselves entrenched in that 3 seed so they don't have to worry about the play-in as it is right now. They are currently a game ahead of those 5 teams in the Western Conference, whether that be the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Warriors, the T-Wolves, and last but not least, I'm missing one of the teams, Nuggets, T-Wolves, Warriors, Clippers, and Grizzlies. So, and we'll get to the standings in a moment when it comes to that. But Luka should be a bunch of bouquets thrown at him, and it probably will be sickening and exhausting after the first couple of minutes. But again, that's what's going to be expected based on this controversial trade, how it all went down, etc. So that is number one. Let's see, what do I got here? Hey, look who's there in the house. 6 wins in a row for the Mets, my guy Jonathan. I'm going to get to the baseball in a second. And Jonathan, I don't know if you got to watch my vlog, so I don't know if you hopped on board from the very beginning or not, but I put out a vlog there yesterday, taking the temperature of the Met fan. Are they a little bit too optimistic? That was my title. So if you haven't watched that after this live stream, please do so. And if you have watched it, I'd love to get your take on that. So please share with that here in the chat room. Now, the other big news coming out of the association yesterday was the Nuggets firing their head coach and the GM, Calvin Booth, but the head coach there, Michael Malone, which I don't know what's going on in the league when you look at just 10 days ago or 12 days ago by now, where the Grizzlies fired Taylor Jenkins, and even though they were in the midst of losing 4 out of 5, and I don't know if he had lost the locker room or if there was a difference of opinion or philosophy between the front office and the head coach, but in this instance, with just 3 games left, and I get that they've lost 4 in a row, but how is this possible? And it's weird because a lot of the things that I've read and heard over the last 24 hours is that the Cronkies, in this particular case, Josh, the son, who was looking at the lay of the land with this team, knowing that, let's just say, and they're going to make it to the postseason. Now, they're in danger of possibly even getting into the play-in scenario, which is the last thing you want, because that means, although you have a safety net, if you're the 7-8, and especially if you're the home team, if you lose that game, you still would be able to play again against the 9-10 winner, as I mentioned earlier. But you want to avoid that. You want to rest up your guys. You already got guys injured, Jamal Murray in particular. Jokic, who's had a long off season and is also nursing an ankle injury, although he's played recently. But to have those 4 or 5 days leading into the postseason season, which will begin a week from this Saturday, you want to be able to have a blow. You don't want to have to play Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever those games will commence, as to how the schedule makers will put that out there. We're not going to find out until we get to the end of Sunday. And remember, the NBA schedule, a bunch of 1 o'clock games and 3:30 games. No night games, because I'm sure they want to make out the schedule for those teams that are going to be playing the doubleheader Tuesday and the doubleheader on Wednesday before you get the games there Thursday and Friday. But going back to the Nuggets, this is a scenario where it's very puzzling for the front office, for them to pull the plug on their head coach and GM. A lot of it has been talked about. Maybe there's been differences between the coach, Mike Malone, and Calvin Booth, the GM, who are both jettisoned. Now the interim is David Adelman, the son of Rick Adelman. But going back to Josh Kroenke, I'm all over the map here, people, so I appreciate it. For the stuff that I've heard is that they are concerned about this team, the way they played here down the stretch. All right, they lost 4 in a row, whatever, and in danger of getting into the playing scenario. But then which is actually a little bit outlandish. But sometimes with these executives and ownership, they could think way out the box. That let's say if the Nuggets go on a long playoff run, let's say they get to a conference final. And last year, remember, they got to a game 7 of a conference semifinal before losing to the T-Wolves. And just 2 years ago, they won a championship. But let's just say they get to a conference final. Now they can't pull the plug on Malone or the GM, so they have to keep them because of the success that they had. And I get it's all about championships. There's no more victories to get to a conference final and lose in, let's say, 6 games. But their thought process, from what I heard, is that they'd rather just do this now. That let's say they fizzle out in a first round. And right now, you'd have a situation where the Clippers would play the Nuggets. Now, that's going to change because you have all those teams that are in a logjam with each other to where a 2-game losing streak could either make them the 6th, 7th, or 8th seed, or a 2-game winning streak could actually put them in the 4th seed. Lakers right now looking pretty good for the 3, although they are a game ahead of everybody else in the standings, but still, they can lose tonight to Dallas because you know it's going to be emotional. That's going to be a situation where Anthony Davis, I'm sure, they're going to want to get into the play-in because right now they're playing for the 9-10 against Sacramento, who already clinched their spot. But Dallas, although they're going to be safe because the Suns are in a 7-game losing streak and they lost last night to Golden State at home and lost by 38. I get it, no Kevin Durant, but they've just been embarrassing and they don't deserve it. So you would think right now that the Mavericks are going to make it into the play-in tournament, but they still have an outside shot to host that game to where having it in their building, at least they don't have to travel to Sacramento to play that game and possibly be on their way out as a one and done, as opposed to having the game in the friendly confines of their building. And then who knows? They win that game. Now they have to go on the road to play the 7-8 winner. But hey, strange things that happen. Now the Mavericks aren't going to get to a final this year like they did last year, and they're not going to have any length in this playoff. I get it, but no more victories, understood. But at least they can close their season out with some positivity. Because as I talked about ad infinitum and ad nauseum, even just prior to this discussion with the Nuggets with Luka, yeah, we know it's been a nightmare here for the last 2+ months. But with the Nuggets, I feel as if this was maybe a bit premature. And if the logic for the front office is because, oh, we're afraid of them going on a good run, let's say they're going to beat the Clippers in the first round, and then let's say they even upset the Oklahoma City Thunder because that's who they play in the second round. Or let's say they get to a knockdown, drag-down 7-game series where Jokic just has a series out of his mind and Oklahoma City just gets through the finish line and advances to a conference final. And then what are they going to do? Oh, well, we're going to have to fire Coach Mike Malone. They would almost want to have it to where they would get ousted in the first round or get embarrassed in the second round, but they can't predict that. So they figure, let's just abort here. Let's just move on and bring in Adelman as the assistant. And if he does well, maybe he'll get the job. But if not, we'll hire somebody else, and away we go. And I think that's just terrible. There's a guy that won a championship 2 years ago. Now, all of a sudden, he's a bad coach. And I get it. Teams have bad stretches, and it's bad timing here where they've lost 4 in a row, and you don't want to go into the playoffs stumbling. But at the same time, it's a scenario where this guy just won you the first championship in the franchise's history, and now all of a sudden, we want him out. And you've seen this throughout the course of the last half dozen years, whether it's Nick Nurse in Toronto, him getting axed. And you can't fault him because Toronto has not been good. All right, they made the playoffs a couple years ago, and I believe that's when he got fired, if I'm not mistaken. Who did they play in that first round? I'd have to think about that, but I know they made the playoffs prior to him getting fired, and then now he's in Philadelphia. And how's that worked out for him? And I get it. They haven't been healthy and Embiid, and just been a disaster. And they've been tanking because they don't want to be any higher than 6 because that means the pick goes to OKC of all teams. But these coaches that have been getting fired, whether it's Mike Budenholzer winning a championship and then 2 years later, he's out. On top of Frank Vogel, I get it in the bubble with the Lakers, but then he gets jettisoned. Nick Nurse, you saw what happened there. Taylor Jenkins, I get he hasn't won a thing, but he's the winningest coach in the franchise's history, which isn't saying much because it's not as if Memphis has had a ton of success. What have they made? 2 conference finals in 30 years as a franchise? And mind you, they started in Vancouver before they went to Memphis. So I get that, but still, what happened there? And then Malone, just a mess there. And I don't know if Denver's going to be able to regroup. And I would think maybe if they have a chance, if they make it as a 4, 5, or 6 seed, or they have an outside shot for a 3, then maybe they could kind of exhale and get themselves together. But all I could say is this is just one that came out of left field, inexplicable. Obviously, I'm not in Denver or in Memphis and in these cities where I can get a better finger on the pulse of what's going on. But boy, that is just, to me, that's panic. Because we got to do something. The players, the coach, they're not in sync. The message is falling on deaf ears, whatever. But to do this so late in the season, to me, is just asinine. Middle of the season, all right, something's going on here, fine. And listen, I follow these sports closely, despite the fact that I'm not in those cities. But, it's not as if I'm from afar thinking like, oh, what happened? Oh, he got fired. All right. I'm trying to dig. I'm trying to see, wait a minute, what's going on here? What's happening? That's why I brought up the scenario in Denver, that the reason why they fired Malone now is because they're afraid that, let's say he gets to a Game 7 against OKC and loses, or even upsets OKC, and now they're back in the conference final, and even if they lose in 5, or let's say even they get swept, but how can you just terminate your coach based on them beating OKC, who were the 1 seed in the West and arguably the best team in the NBA all year? So the math is a mathing, people. So you know that I'm trying to find out what is really happening, what is really going on. And in this case, I'm not buying. But that's why they're into these teams, front offices, doesn't mean that they're right. All we got to do is look at what happened in Dallas, as we've talked about. So, yeah, why now? I don't know why they fired him. To me, it doesn't make any sense. Just play it out. And if they go on a run, so be it. That's when you sit down with your coach and your GM and say, hey, whatever you guys got going on behind the scenes, whatever you're bumping heads, so on and so forth, let's knock it off. We had a very good season up to this point, and let's say they get to a postseason and get to a conference final, if you want to find, or a semifinal, whatever. But that's just me. Okay? As the guy who's running the team, you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, everybody's in sync. And if the GM, for whatever reason, is coming out saying just weird things or whatever, get him out of here. Or the coach not sticking with the philosophy by the front office and ownership to a certain degree, then the coach has to go. But, I mean, it's just a mess. So, anyway, that's what we have there with the Nuggets. And then how about that meltdown by the T-Wolves last night before I get to the standings out west? They had a 24-point lead in the fourth quarter against the Bucks and lost. Lost the game. No Damian Lillard, as you know. The Bucks right now looking as if they're going to be on the road in Indiana to play the Pacers in that first round, which would be a rematch of the first round last year where the Bucks had the home court. But obviously it didn't stick because they didn't have Giannis or Damian Lillard for parts or for majority. In fact, they didn't have Giannis throughout the whole 6-game series that they lost to the Pacers. But for the T-Wolves, and they're in a quandary now because with all those teams, I'm going to pull up the standings now, with all those teams that are locked into one another in the West, that they could either go as high as 3 or go as far down as 8. And again, not to bring up the whole playing scenario, but I'm sure you all know that you want to avoid that altogether. As it's constituted, the T-Wolves, they would have won last night, and even though they're a game behind, and their schedule is easy because they play the Jazz, they also play down the stretch. I think they play in Memphis tonight. Let me pull up their schedule here real quick. They play in Memphis tomorrow, and then they close out the final 2 games, I believe, are in that building. I know they play Utah, and they play the Brooklyn Nets. So Memphis, not going to be an easy game because Memphis is also part of that Royal Rumble there in the conference. But as we break it down, your 3 seed are the Lakers, 48-31. Then you have the Clippers, Nuggets, Warriors, and Grizzlies, all at 47-32. And then you have the T-Wolves at 46-33. So even though the 3 games, relatively easy, the Memphis game's going to be tricky because think about it. They're going to play one another. And funny enough, if the season ended right now, the 7-8 play-in scenario is Minnesota at Memphis. So having this win, and I don't know what the tiebreaker scenario is between the two teams, because if they do end with the same record, whomever won the season series now, if they both tied, if they played the 4 games, then we'll have to see by conference, I guess, is the next tiebreaker. But the one thing that if you're the Grizzlies, obviously that is, the T-Wolves, that is a must-win for them tomorrow because of the aforementioned, the tiebreaker scenario. But having that game where they would have had it in their back pocket, they also would have been 47-32 and put themselves in good stead, considering that the back end of their schedule is against 2 teams that obviously have been out to sea probably since the middle of February. But now they're going to have to really scratch and claw to try to avoid the play-in situation. And Memphis, that's also a big game for them. But with the Clippers, Nuggets, Warriors, to Val B, if you're still in the room, that was just a tough loss for the T-Wolves. And what does that mean for the rest of the conference? All right, let's go through the schedule for each. Lakers, as we all know, they're going to play the Mavericks tonight. Then after that, they go to Houston. They play the Rockets at home. With the Rockets, they already clinched the 2 seeds, so I'm sure they're going to rest. They'll play their players, but obviously it's not going to be balls to the wall. And then they go to Portland to close out the year. So you would think relatively easy for the Lakers. I think they're going to end up being the 3 seed. So obviously I'm not going out on a limb by saying that, but that's what you have there with them. As far as the Clippers go, and these are the teams that are now all 47-32, because we already talked about the T-Wolves and what they have to do here down the stretch of the year. Clippers, they'll host the Rockets tonight, and then their final couple of games to close out the year will be at Sacramento and at Golden State. That's going to be a huge game with the Warriors there, Sunday 3:30, because when you have a situation, if they both have the same record, you got tiebreakers, of course, but where do they fall in the seedings? Right now, the Clippers have the 4 seed, which means that they will host in the first round of the NBA playoffs. They don't want to slip any further than that. And I understand that home court doesn't mean everything, but would you rather have a game 7 in your building or a pivotal game 5 if it's tied at 2? Absolutely. We saw what happened last year with the Clippers when they went back to LA 2-2 in the first round against Dallas, and they lost by 30 in their building. And then they lost a game 6 in Dallas, as you know. But still, you'd rather have the home court than not. Not that it's an enormous factor, but again, one more time, would you rather have those pivotal games in the comforts of your own home where you sleep in your own bed, or you have to fly out to the city on the road in a hotel, not accustomed to being in your own home, own bed, etc.? I'm sure you would take the former. Nuggets at Sacramento tonight. Then they have at, can we scroll here? Thank you. At Houston to close out their season, and then Memphis, another big game. And as a matter of fact, I remember on the podcast Monday, I talked about how Memphis just has a very tough schedule. Obviously, we talked about Minnesota. They got to play Denver, and we'll get to Memphis right now as far as who they will wrap up with. We know about the T-Wolves. We know about Denver. And their final game is home to Dallas. And Dallas, if it's for home court, they're going to need the game. So obviously a very dicey proposal for their schedule, and we're going to see how that shakes down. And then for Golden State, for my guy Val B, the Warriors, we talked about the 2 games that they're going to play. As you know, final game against the Clippers, which is enormous. And then final game against, pulling up the Warrior schedule here to just show the Clippers. That's why I mentioned Clippers. San Antonio at home, at Portland, and then the Clippers in their building. Easy schedule for them. And coming off of that big win in Phoenix last night, you would think that they would at least go into that Clipper game, maybe with 2 wins in a row, and will have themselves in a situation where they could possibly get to a 4-5 seed and even maybe get the home court in that first round, barring what the Clippers do. And the Clipper schedule I just talked about, let's just make sure we get that all taken care of. Yes. So that's what we have there with the NBA. In the Eastern Conference, there's not really to discuss, so I'm not even going to go there. So that is your NBA. Let me pull up the main page here. I know you got probably some comments to discuss. So that's what's happening in the association. Let's get right to it. My guy, Nike, thank you, my man. I really appreciate everything, even what you said about the vlog with the Mets. So thank you for that. And Jonathan, my man, thank you. I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, Nike, blessings to you and everybody else that are in the chat room. Got 5 people here. That's good. Love it. Love to see it. And hopefully that will continue to add up and just multiply as we move it along here in the coming weeks and months to come. All right, I'm going to get to the baseball, but I want to talk hockey only because you had a couple of situations there with this home stretch. There's no drama in the playoff push by any means, unlike the NBA with the Western Conference. But you did have, all right, the Atlantic Division, I get it, because you have Tampa, Toronto, and the Panthers, who beat Toronto yesterday. So they do inch closer, but Toronto, they'll play the Lightning tonight in a huge game. And I think if Toronto wins tonight, I think they will win the Atlantic, which means they'll be a 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. They don't want to go over Florida, meaning losing 3-1 last night and then have to go to Tampa and lose tonight, because that means Tampa will get closer, just like the Panthers have gotten closer, and I'll pull up the standings there. But that's the only juice that you have in the National Hockey League, because the wild cards are pretty much a wrap. The Canadians have won 6 in a row here. Ottawa clinched the playoff spot, which means they have the 1 seed right now in the wild card, and then the Canadians are right behind them. But for the remaining part of the divisions, other than the Atlantic, there's nothing really to discuss. Washington shooing to win the division there in the Metropolitan. The Jets, and the Dallas Stars, although separated by 4 points, but the Stars lost not an inexplicable game, an unfathomably inexplicable game, if there ever is such a sentence or 2 words can be uttered back to back. Did you see what happened in that game last night where the Stars could have drawn 2 points behind the Jets in the Western Conference for the 1 seed? The Vancouver Canucks in Dallas had a 5-2 lead with exactly 1 minute to go when they scored a goal to make it 5-3. Now, of course, they're going to have the 2-man advantage. They pulled the goalie 6-on-5. You know the deal. 30 seconds later, they get a goal from Pius Suter. Now they cut it a 5-2 lead. They score the goal there at 5-3. And now Pius Suter scores a goal with 30 seconds to go. Now it's 5-4. 23 seconds after that, Pius Suter scores another goal. They tie the game. And then on top of all that, if you can even believe, 5-2 with literally 1 minute to go. As you hear the announcer, if you watch hockey, they'll say last minute to go in the period. All right, they score a goal there, 5-3. All right, no problem. Game's over. They just drew closer. 30 seconds later, score another goal. Wait. Now it's 5-4. All right, guys, let's clamp down. Let's just get this game. We'll be 2 points closer to the Jets. No. They score a goal 23 seconds later, so it was 5-2, and in 53 seconds, they scored 3 goals, and now it's 5-5. And then in overtime, the Canucks, who were barely hanging on for dear life as far as their wild card hopes, because you have Minnesota and St. Louis, the top 2 out in the West, and the Canucks right now, I believe, are 6 points behind the Blues, and then you have Calgary ahead of them, 2 points, and are 4 back. But then Vancouver wins the game in overtime thanks to Kiefer Sherwood with 1:16 to go, or 1:15, whatever it was. And even though Dallas gets a point, but right, they got 1 point where they should have gotten 2, and they end up losing the game. 6-5. Historic. Never in the 100 and whatever, 2, 3, 4 years in the National Hockey League's history has a team been down 3 goals with 1 minute to go and lose the game. Now, they lost in overtime, but they still lost. That game, they had no business losing that game. And I understand, grand scheme of things, people are saying, Jay Reels, nobody cares about the Canucks. Nobody cares about the Stars. Nobody even cares about the National Hockey League. I understand. But that is a monumental collapse, and I just had to bring that up. And speaking of which, right next to that, the Islanders are done. The Islanders, they are 8 points behind a playoff spot, tied with the other teams, whether it be the Bruins and the Rangers and I believe, Columbus, all have 79 points. 8 behind the Canadians in the East for the wild card. But the Islanders had a 6-4 lead with less than 3 minutes to go in Nashville. Nashville's been brutal. They've been dreadful. And what happens? They also lose the game in overtime 7-6 as they give up 2 goals in the final 3 minutes. Maybe not as bad as Dallas did to Vancouver, but still a 2-goal lead with less than 3 minutes to go. You got to win that game. Find a way, and they didn't. So their postseason hopes are up in smoke. And who knows what they're going to do. They need to make some big-time changes there on the island. Everybody knows I'm an Islander fan, blue and orange, just like the Mets. But brutal loss there. But there's not really discussed there in the National Hockey League as their season concludes a week from today, or tomorrow, excuse me. So a week from tomorrow, the season will be kaput, and the playoffs will begin that Sunday, which falls on the same weekend of the NBA playoffs. So obviously a lot to chew on here over the course of the next 8 to 10 days or so before the playoffs begin in the fall and winter sports. So you know I'm going to be all over that. So that's what you have there with the NHL. Real quick with the baseball, as I don't even have a graphic up, I don't believe. I thought I did have one here. MLB, I do not. But anyway, you know, I'll type one up real quick. I got to make it legit, people. I just can't not put one up. I thought I did have one. So Major League Baseball, 2 weeks into the season after today, because we all know it began 2 weeks ago tomorrow. And for Major League Baseball, let's get right to it. Some storylines here. Can we talk about the Mets? As they're going to go for a sweep and 7 in a row before they go to Sacramento to play the A's over the weekend. And the Mets, listen, when you play the Marlins 6 times and you may end up winning 5 of 6, 4 of 6 at worst. And then I get it that Toronto came into Citi Field last week. They were 5-2, riding high, and then the Mets ended up sweeping them. But the one thing that's been impressive about this streak here, granted Marlins 6 times are going to help, is that they pitched well. Now, yesterday the bats broke out, 10 runs. Alonso with a bases-clearing 3-run double to ice the game. Fantastic. You love it as a Met fan. But it's early. And just like I said here on the live stream 2 weeks ago, how you want to get off to a fast start, but to me it's overrated. Because all you got to do is look at the last couple of years with the Mets one more time, for those who forgot, a little history lesson. 2 years ago, after making the postseason in 2022, they got off to a 14-7 start to the year. And then how did that work out for the 2023 Mets? Nowhere to be found in the National League playoff picture. And then last year, remember, they started off 0-5, and they were almost 0-6 in a near-empty Citi Field where they won on a walk-off against the Detroit Tigers. And they were 24-35, and even more so, they were 22-33 after getting swept by the Dodgers during that Memorial Day early part of the week. And then into the weekend, they played 4 games against Arizona, and they split those 4 games. So that's why I'm coming up with 24-35. And how did their season play out from June 2nd on? They got to a Game 6 of the NLCS. So even though you're not going to throw these wins away, 8-3, great start to their season. I get it. Marlins, and although the Marlins have been competitive, it's not as if they started off their season 2-9. I mean, they came into the series, 5-4? And now I believe the Marlins are probably going to start to fall back and end up being at the bottom of the National League East. But you'd only play the teams that are in front of you. And right now, you got to admit, whether it was losing 2 out of 3, I get it, in Houston, or sweeping the Blue Jays, who came in pretty hot to Citi Field over the weekend. But you got to be impressed. They pitched well here. And even though that their rotation, as I talked about 2 weeks ago, and again, not too fond of, but hopefully they'll get some reinforcements as we get deeper into the spring. And, of course, once you get into summer, right around the All-Star break before the trade deadline, where they could get a frontline starter or at least a 2 to stabilize that rotation, that'd be fantastic. But you got to be happy with what they've done. And I don't want to make this all Met-centric, but we got Met fans in the room. My guy Nike, my guy Jonathan especially. And let's see, you got some comments here. And, of course, my guy JD. James, thank you very much. Let's go Mets indeed. Another big-time Met fan. And then Nike also, yeah, man, LGM, you already know. And better team, better outcome. Listen, I cannot complain by what they've done here. And hopefully they go for a sweep. They'll have a day off tomorrow. They'll fly out to Sacramento, I believe, after the game today, as they'll want to land, get acclimated to the time zone there, and even to their surroundings. First time the Mets will be out in Sacramento because, as we all know, They were formerly the Oakland A's, but we will see with the Mets here as they close out their series. And I know the Yankees on the other side of town, I'm not going to bash them because, right, it's easy to say, oh, Yankees can't score a run in Detroit. They lose, what was it, 6-1 on Monday. They get shut out there yesterday, and they'll also close out their series in another, 25 minutes. And the Met game is also a 1:10 start. So pretty much once we leave from here, you can tune into Mets, Yankees, or any other teams that are playing. I believe you have a bunch of afternoon games today, which you like here in early April. But with let me pull up my MLB. With the baseball right now, I'm going to pull up some standings here. Let me at least get a little bit accurate as to a better overlook as to what's going on here. I don't know if my guy Bio is in the room, but the Dodgers come back down to earth here. Losing 3 in the last 4. They lose 2 in Washington as they lost 2 out of 4 or 5 now. Take that back because they were 8-0 going into Philadelphia before they lost 2 out of 3. And then they lose the first 2 to the Washington Nationals. And the Nationals have played a little bit better. But the Dodgers have now come back to the pack. And that's a very competitive NL West. Giants are 9-3. As I mentioned, they're going to invade the Bronx over the weekend. Padres 9-3. And the Dodgers 9-4, or excuse me, Giants are 8-3, Padres 9-3. Wait, Padres 9-3, Giants 8-3, Dodgers 9-4. Reel it in. Jay Reels reeling it in here as I get myself refocused and back on the beam here. But for NL West, you would think, is that going to be competitive all year round? Is it going to be a 2-team race when you think it's all said and done? I know the Diamondbacks right now at 500. I'm sure they're going to be heard from, but the NL West looking like a very formidable division, at least over the course of the first 2 weeks of the year. Cubs have played well, 9-5. I know that AL or NL Central, just like the AL Central, right now in mediocre form. I know the Tigers have played well here, winning 5 in a row, but we'll see if the Cubs can continue their success here as the Dodgers will head to the Windy City over the weekend. Long road trip. I have to take that back. Dodgers leaving Washington to go back to the West Coast as the Cubs will go out to Chavez Ravine over the weekend. So that'll be an interesting test for the Cubs. Remember, those two teams played in Japan to start the year where the Cubs went 0-2. So keep that in mind as the Cubs, if they do win their game today, as they'll look for a sweep against the Texas Rangers. And we know the Rangers have gotten off to a good start, but not so much over the course of the last 2 days. But that's what you have there with the Cubs. Let's see if they can continue their winning ways and maybe even sweep the Rangers in the process. Tigers, as I mentioned, I know the Guardians have underachieved. Royals now have won 3 in a row as they had gotten off to a slow start in themselves. And then you have the Yankees. Let's see if they can avoid a sweep at the hands of the Tigers. Blue Jays have beaten Boston the last 2 days after getting swept in Citi Field. And the Orioles can't seem to find their way. Rays have lost 5 in a row. That's just in the AL East. And then the Mets currently with a half-game lead over the Phillies. Winners of 6 in a row, as you know. Followed by Marlins, Nats, Braves, 2-8. Rough start for the Braves. And remember, I picked them to go to a World Series this year. So, but still way too early. We've seen teams bounce back and rebound, but let's see if the Braves, who struggling right now, as a matter of fact, they have the worst record in baseball. And they're in the midst of playing the Phillies. So they play them tonight, tomorrow, to round out their series before they move on to the next series. I don't know where Atlanta plays next, but I'll talk more about MLB tomorrow on the podcast, Apple, Spotify, jreels.com, of course, here on YouTube as well. So that's it with the baseball. I don't know if there's anything else. Well, I guess I'll bring this up. Some sad news and very terrible and tragic news. And only because he played for the 2 local teams. Rookie as a Met in 99. And I loved him. I wish they didn't trade him. I know he was part of that trade. I believe was sent off the top of my head in the Mike Hampton deal after the 99 season where Hampton was with the Astros, brought him over to the Mets, played on that 2000 Met team that won an NL pennant. But Octavio Dotel, who played for, I believe, 12 teams or even 13 teams, and was a mini Pedro when he was with the Mets, had that big wind-up delivery. A lot of people thought that he could be, not to compare him to Pedro Martinez, but a lot of people thought that he had a lot of Pedro in him. Maybe not as much as the flair, but the wind-up delivery, had a bunch of very good off-speed pitches. started, but also relieved on that Met team in 99 that went to a Game 6 in the NLCS against the Braves, but then got shipped to Houston and then just played everywhere, even with the Yankees, I believe, in 06, if I'm not mistaken. He was on the 06 team. But for he and also Tony Blanco, who had played a handful of games with the Washington Nationals, I believe dating back to 2000, I don't know if it was 15 or 5. I want to say 15. Happened to be in this nightclub down in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and then the roof collapsed. And I believe, sadly, the death toll is continuing to rise. I believe it's now somewhere in the 90s. And Dotel, who was pulled from the rubble, a lot of people thought that he was going to remain alive, but when he was transported to the hospital, was pronounced dead. And Dotel had a very good career, long career. When you play 12 different teams, you would think that you're playing for at least 12 years or somewhere along those lines. I believe he played 13 years, maybe even 15 off the top of my head. But 51 years of age, way too young. And Tony Blanco also passing away in this just terrible wreck and tragedy. So thoughts, prayers, condolences go out to the Dotel family, the Blanco family, Major League Baseball, etc. That is just a story that, you never, ever want to hear. And just to know that dozens of other people have perished, and hopefully it doesn't get into the hundreds. It looks like maybe it'll pass the threshold, hopefully not. But just an awful story coming out of the Dominican Republic there on Monday night with just a couple of players. And even Nelson Cruz, his sister, who I believe is either a lawyer or a politician in that area or a congresswoman, et cetera. His sister passed away. You can't even think of the tragedy and just how awful that story is to know that former Major League Baseball players and people connected to players in the major leagues had just died. It's just terrible. Nothing more I can add there. And then some comments here. Look who's in the house. Nancy Del Monte. I'm going to come to some other stuff besides sports at the end, but thank you very much, as always. And what did Nike say? So much for the submarine bats. Yeah, so the torpedo bats, absolutely. I want to get into a couple other things before I could say, I didn't see James comment here. What can my Knicks do to beat the Celtics? Girl, I know, that was a brutal loss. I didn't touch on that last night. And, of course, I watched being a Celtic fan, but that was a rough loss to where end the regulation, Celtics were down 1, and then they had the layup there by Josh Hart. And then next thing you know, come down the court, Jason Tatum hits that step-back 3, ties the game, goes into overtime. And then Porzingis, the former Knick, hits that deep 3 to make it 115-112. And then on that inbounds pass, and what was the score then? I think it was 117, 114 at that point? No, I think it was 115, 112. The inbounds pass that goes off of Mikal Bridges and out of bounds, and that pretty much wrapped up the game for the Knicks as they were 0-4 against the Celtics, 0-3 against the Cavaliers. They're going to have another shot against the Cavs on Friday in their building, and 0-2 against the Thunder, the 3 teams that had the best records in the sport. 0-9 against them. It could be 0-10 depending on the outcome there Friday night. So that's what you have there. And then a couple of other quick things before I bid adieu. One, and I understand this is not going to be on a lot of people's radar, but tomorrow begins the tradition unlike any other. The azaleas blooming, Amen Corner, Augusta. When you think of spring, and as I mentioned at the top of this live stream, sadly, in the Northeast, when it's 42 degrees and you still have skull caps on and parkas or bubble coats, etc., maybe watching just an hour of this will bring some warm thoughts into your hearts, because whenever I think of the Masters, I just think that's when spring is here. Even dating back to a boy. Now, I didn't really follow golf as a boy, and I followed golf more so over the last 20-plus years. So, and the Masters is the Super Bowl of golf. But some storylines here just to touch on real quick. The biggest one being Rory McIlroy, considering that he has not won a major tournament, the 4 major golf tournaments, of course, the Masters, the PGA, the U.S. Open, and the Open Championship, which was formerly known as the British Open. And those are the ones I follow. Yes, can I follow the TPC, the Players Championship, which a few weeks ago down in Ponte Vedra at Sawgrass, where Rory McIlroy won? And he can win a bunch of these tournaments. the ones that maybe people does not have on their radar. But we all know it's about the major tournaments. Same for tennis, when we're talking about the French, the Australian, the US Open, and Wimbledon. Whomever comes out winning those are the ones that you want to hang your hat on, not the Miami Open or Indian Wells for tennis or the LA Open or even the Bay Hill Invitational, which I get it. Those are big golf tournaments, but they're not major tournaments. When we look at the golfers, we go by the majors. And considering that Rory McIlroy has not won going on 11 years, it's been a full solid decade. His last tournament was back in 2014, where I believe he won the US Open, or maybe that was the British at that time in 2014. So here it is. This drought, which has gone on well over a decade, will it end here? And considering he's played well at the start of this golf season, although to me the season starts tomorrow at Augusta, but now he's got to back it up. He's going to have to show and prove whether or not we know he has the talent and he's worthy of winning a major, but he unfolds in big moments, and he has not been clutch. He has not been a guy that has been reliable on the final day of the tournament, whether it be on a Sunday. Obviously, it is on a Sunday, but for him, he has not delivered. And I got nothing against McIlroy. I'm not a guy that, he's never going to win again. Listen, he's due. He's overdue. There's going to come a point where he's going to win one of these tournaments. And the reason why I focus in on the Masters is because this is the one tournament that he has not won. And you can harken back many moons ago when he had a lead at Augusta. I believe he had a 3-stroke lead heading into the final day of the tournament, and he spit the bit. And there have been times where, even in recent memory, and I even think as early as last year, when Scottie Scheffler won last year. And Scheffler, who always has fast starts to his golf seasons. And we could argue whether or not he could be the favorite going in as a defending champ. But we've seen Rory McIlroy post crazy final day numbers. 65 in the final round, where he's 2 strokes behind. But the thing is, he's already out of the tournament, and he puts himself in such a deep hole that even though he may close out with a 65 or 66 and be 2 strokes at the end of the leaderboard when it's all said and done, but that's equivalent to watching a game where, let's just say, Mets win a game 9-8, but they were 9-1 in the 7th inning. But the bullpen in the 7th, 8th, and the top of the 9th blew it to the point where, well, almost blew it to the point where the opposition got closer to where the game was 9-8. And as we all know, it wasn't as close as the score indicated. This is what Rory McIlroy has done here, especially at the Masters over the last, I'll say, half decade. Now it's time for him to shine. There isn't anything else that he can prove. He can win all these other tournaments, the Scottish Open that he did last year. He can win it all. It has to get to a point where he has to get to a major. And now this one, because he has won a U.S. Open, he has won a PGA, and he has won an Open Championship. He's got to get the career Open, which only 5 other golfers have done in the history of the sport, including Jack Nicklaus and including Tiger. Phil Mickelson hasn't done it. And we're going down the line of the top golfers. Arnold Palmer hasn't won career slam. Guys like that. So if he wins this tournament, if Sunday he's putting on the green jacket, he'll be one of 6. And for whatever the reason, it's all in here with Rory. We know he has the talent. We know he has the ability. But for whatever the reason, whether he's hitting strokes into the bunker or hitting it off the tee into a bunker, when his approach, he's in the lie, or even worse, when he has a makeable 10-foot putt and it goes right or it goes left. That's where, when the money's on the line, he doesn't deliver. And that's been his narrative here over the last 10 years. And he's the big storyline going in. There is no ifs, ands, buts, maybes about it. And then you have Scottie Scheffler, who I talked about, and you have a big field where there are guys that have won more recent vintage, whether it be the Xander Schauffele's of the world, the Cam Smiths, and of course you're going to have the live players coming back into the fold. Whether your name is Bryson DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka, Patrick Reed, guys like that. John Rahm, how can I forget him? So when you have a situation where, even though Rory is going to be a guy that is going to have the spotlight on him completely, and for obvious reasons, But you have to admit, this is going to be a tournament that, and a lot of the live players have played well here at Augusta since they've had the split, or since the golfers had defected over to live. But this isn't a thing where, and I get it, I could put all of the emphasis on Rory for everything that I mentioned, but you have all those other guys that are going to come in, and I would think are going to be primed to play this golf course, because as we all know, despite the fact that they've made tweaks to this course over the years, but this is a golfer-friendly course. This isn't a par 5, 538 yards. The players know this course like the back of their hand. It's not as if all the other tournaments where they get moved and shifted around to other venues, right? Where one year you can have a U.S. Open at Torrey Pines, but then the next year you'll have it in Bethpage, or you have it in Oakmont, or you have it elsewhere. So the players are well familiar with this golf course. And for whatever the reason, over the years, they brought the golf course to its knees. Now, mind you, you're not going to have players shoot 20 under, but you're going to have players that are going to shoot 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 under in this tournament, barring bad weather. And last year, I remember the weather at Augusta was brutal over the course of Friday into Saturday. And in fact, let me see if I can pull this up real quick with the weather down there in Augusta, because I should have gotten this prior to. So if you bear with me just for a quick second before I get to some other things. Now, the weather looks like, other than Friday, you have a 70% chance of rain. Tomorrow, 74 and sunny. 70% chance of rain on Friday. 64 and sunny Saturday, and then 70 and sunny on Sunday. And then it's going to warm up after that, but nobody cares. So other than Friday, you look like you're going to have some very good weather there at Augusta, which should mean for competitive golf, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, I will handicap it and give you more of a preview tomorrow, but I just thought to bring that up on the eve of the Masters and the first tournament of the year. I had to bring that up. My guy, you missed my little Dodger talk earlier, losing 4-5. I know Bio, who's been a big fan, and of course, a big part of the live streams here over the course of the last couple of months. He's a big Dodger fan, so I'm sure, I don't know, whomever's in the room, they needle him a little bit. Not that you have to or whatever. But Bio and I, we've gone back and forth on YouTube talking about how when they beat the Braves last Wednesday and Shohei had the walk-off and they were 8-0, and we kidded about 162-0. And even after losing the Friday game in Philadelphia, and then they followed that up with a win before Sunday's game, we talked about 161-1. Well, right now, it is looking like 158-4. All right. So I'm sure Bio would take that at the end of the day, but we all know he's a good fan, big fan. I appreciate all of his participation, just like I appreciate everybody, Nike, James, of course, Jonathan, Nancy, if you're still in the room, Val B. I got 6 people in the chat, so whatever is on your mind, people, get at me now as we're past 1 o'clock here on the East Coast. And I know you got some ball games coming up, which I'm sure you want to watch. Maybe you're watching it in the background as first pitch is just moments away at Citi Field with the Mets and the Marlins as well as the Yankees. They're on Prime, I believe. So you don't have to go to Yes to watch them. But a rough stretch, but hoping to get back on track today. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would think they'll get they'll salvage this series before going back to LA to play the Cubs there over the weekend. But lastly, we'll talk about any last thoughts. Yeah, to close out here with any last thoughts, and maybe I'll make this a theme as we move it along here. Now, I talked about this briefly last week, but it was kind of, I don't want to say in passing, or it was something that was abrupt, because I did mention it, I did bring it up, and I'll post this again. I've been watching a lot of videos lately. And what I mean by that is I have my tentacles on everything that's happening in sports. And I'll see some videos that get brought up about whether it's, and I'll call them out, I don't care. I got nothing against them, etc. But Stephen A. Smith, he'll come out and say something. Like I know the other day, he and Shannon Sharp were in debate with PK Subban, the former defenseman, NHL, longtime player, Nashville, Montreal Canadiens, Jersey Devils. And they were talking the parallels between what Alex Ovechkin did in becoming the NHL's all-time leading goal scorer at 39, and then LeBron, who, as we all know, eclipsed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar a couple of years back for the most points in NBA history. So they were trying to compare the two. And to me, it's just funny how Stephen A. and Shannon, to a lesser degree, are trying to make a case. Now, of course, going to make a case for LeBron. I get it. But to even talk about Alex Ovechkin. And listen, full disclosure, if I'm going to discuss MMA or another sport that I may not be well versed in, that, let's say, for instance, I even talk college basketball, where am I following college basketball? Yes, I am. But am I watching game in and game out? Am I really dissecting going into the tournament? Yes, I've watched Florida a handful of games, or I watched Duke. I mean, it's easy to watch Duke because now, obviously, with Cooper Flag, they're going to be on all the time. And a lot of these teams you can watch no matter what, ESPN, ESPN Plus, et cetera. I get that. But the thing is that college basketball isn't what it once was, where I was watching religiously. And even though I have to get myself fine-tuned heading into March Madness, but I'm not going to sit here to say, oh, yeah, I watched New Mexico State. Oh, yeah, I watched Colorado State before they lost to Maryland in that opening round heading into the Sweet 16. Listen, I'm not going to fake the funk. I'm going to just call it as I see it. Yeah, I'm not on the Colorado State Rams. I'm sorry. But my point is that I'm going to inform you. I'm going to let you know. Just like I'm sure Stephen A. and Shannon Sharp will do as well. But everybody knows, if you listen to the podcast, I talk Alex Ovechkin more than probably a lot of people. Because I get it. Hockey's not going to move the needle. But when you break an all-time record that was held by the greatest in the sport, he's called the great one for a reason, and one Wayne Gretzky. Do I really have to hear Stephen A. Smith talk about hockey, where the one comment that he says over and over and over, that the only thing I know about hockey that I can relate to is that the puck is black? I mean, seriously, you're going to make a comment like that? Now, I understand that's his way of coming out saying, well, hey, I'm not well-versed on hockey, whatever. All right, that's fine. Because it's like I can come out and say, well, I'm not well-versed on MMA if there's a big fight, or to a certain degree, college basketball. But when you're arguing certain points, and obviously he's going to argue more about the LeBron camp than he would for Alex Ovechkin, but still, I feel like even when he starts to talk about Ovechkin, it's like, wait a second. You wouldn't know Alexander Ovechkin if you found him, let alone he hasn't talked about it. So you can't really get fully in-depth on Ovechkin's side of things. And I understand, if we watch and follow sports, we get an idea, or we could take the temperature, which is fine. But some of the things that I heard him say the other day was just mind-boggling. So as I put this into a picture-perfect analysis, it's videos like that I want to critique, because there's somebody who is a kook when it comes to sports. And it's not to say Stephen A. isn't, or Shannon, or anybody else for that matter. But I want to critique it because I want to put it in the perspective of a fan. Because to me, as serious as I take what it is that I'm doing, this endeavor, doing this full time, not getting paid just yet, earning my keep, my chops, etc., whatever you want to call, I take great pride and seriousness as to what it is that I do. And yes, there is going to be some transparency. There is going to be some authenticity, because I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, hey, the Colorado State Rams, I've been watching them all year, and I thought they had I'm not going to do that to people, 100%. But at the same time, I want to be entertaining, informative, credible, etc. So when I hear other pundits or other talking heads coming out of their face about saying certain things, like, wait a second, what? So I'm going to critique them on that. That doesn't make me any better. That doesn't make me perfect. That doesn't make me the sports god or the sports podcast host of legend. None of that. But if it's out there for the public, just like it's out there for all the podcasts that I put out, live streams, etc., people can critique me and come at me with certain things, and I got to be open for that. And I have been open for that, because if you go back to some of the things that I posted and commented, it's easy just to be like, oh, well, Jay Reels, you're off your rocker by saying that. All right, fine. But I'm going to own up to it. I'm not going to say something just to say it, or I'm not going to say something that I don't really know about, and then, well, I'm going to stand on it. No, there's going to be some credence to what I say. So this is what I mean about these videos that I'm thinking about critiquing over. I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to record them. I'm going to have them maybe not as polished from the start, because obviously it takes reps, just like the live streams take reps. So I'm adding another element to this, and this will probably come in the days and weeks to come. I'm thinking about even posting it on a certain day, and who knows, maybe I'll have something as early as next week. So I'm putting that out there. I see there's some comments here. I don't know if it's related to this or anything else. What did Nancy put here? Thumbs up? Or was that a clap? Oh, that's a wave. I guess you're saying goodbye. Maybe she said goodbye. All right, Nancy. Wednesday. Let's see. Wednesday day games always awesome. Yes, absolutely. Bio. All right, Nike. What do you got here? Stephen A. Smith is a loud stooge. Don't like him. LeBron. Oh, I know. That would have been who. They still would talk about that to this day. So, yeah, LeBron, I got you. Nike. Way to correct that. So, and the reason why I want to do these critique videos is, again, I don't have agendas on Stephen A. or whatever, but it's just calling him out. And it's just not only creative on my part, just to add more content, because we all know content is king in this day and age, but also it's just a different perspective. It's nothing personal by any stretch. I'm not going to get into, oh, well, this guy's a terrible journalist, or, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I may say he may not know what he's talking about a particular subject, but that doesn't mean, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about overall. And I got the inspiration to do these critique videos because of a guy who does real estate. And I won't unpack it or get into it. If you're curious, if you want to know, I'll be more than happy to discuss that. But there's this one particular guy on YouTube, and I watch a lot of YouTube people that I follow, that the light bulb went off. And not only that, but he's been successful in what he does in his realm when it comes to real estate. And I said, wait a minute, I could do this for sports. And yeah, I could do games, critique games. We could talk about the end of the Duke-Houston game, or the end of the Florida-Houston game for that matter. And all right, that's easy to do because we're critiquing games and strategy, etc. But some of the things that are said, and especially in this realm, because I take what I do seriously. And it's not to say that these guys or gals do not take what they take seriously, but I believe that there's a lot of clickbait stuff out there. And for those who watch, follow me, you know that I'm not about that. I'm not about trying to get into, a clickbait item that is just so out there and outlandish that, yes, that's going to attract people to the content or to the podcast, etc. But no, that is not me. Let that be for the 25-year-old keyboard warrior who thinks sports started in 2015 and can't go back in the history books to talk about certain things in sports. And right, again, that doesn't make me high and mighty. I mean, based on that comment, it kind of makes me sound like, whatever. But no, I'm having fun with this. I'm enjoying this. But at the same time, I hold this near and dear to my heart. As I'm going to say now, and I'm going to say to you guys and gals, this is made, all these videos, live streams, podcasts, blogs, etc. This is made by a fan for the fans. That's it. Again, and I played sports as a kid. I played sports as an adult. And right, that doesn't make me a professional athlete or whatever. But the thing is that I'm in tune with what's going on here. And I'm not just some keyboard warrior. I'm not just some nerd that couldn't throw a ball 5 feet ahead of me, or doesn't know how to swing a bat, or never took a jump shot in his life. Because think about it. And I talked about this on a vlog dating way back. So you'd have to go in the archives to watch that if you haven't. But the point of the matter is that my competitive juices from a boy wanted to be my goal, center field for the New York Mets. That hasn't changed. I'll go out, play softball right now, or even hardball for that matter, because I love it. Now, who knows how good I'll be at it? Probably not as good as I was even whatever. But the point of the matter is I'm just all over the map here, people. My apologies. My bottom line is this. I do this for you guys because I love it. I eat it, breathe it, sleep it, you name it. And because of that, I want it to be credible, entertaining, engaging, especially on this platform because I can engage with you guys back and forth. So that's it. And just like if I would have bumped into somebody in the street or a friend of mine would come over and watch the game or here in the chat room, this is what it's all about. It's about having fun, debating, whatever it may be, and not just sniping and not just being nasty or not just, Jay Reels, why would you say that? You know, that's like me saying that, I don't know, like LeBron is whatever, the worst player of all time. And of course, that's not a hot take, it's not whatever. But, you know, people are going to say like, oh, well, why is that? And then, of course, I have to expound on that. But if there's no validity, it's baseless if I were to come out and say something like that. And, you know, there's a bunch of LeBron haters because everybody's looking on Jordan and whatever. And that's another thing, too. I'm not going to get in the whole, oh, who's the GOAT, Jordan, LeBron. And to me, it's silly. To me, that's lazy sports talk. You're not getting lazy sports talk here. And, yes, I can bring up debatable topics and things of that nature. That's good for sports talk, father. But the situation with that, or is Patrick Mahomes the greatest quarterback of all time, or whatever, that's just, it's boring, it's regurgitated, it's lazy. I'm trying to bring a different approach, a fresher approach, a better approach to sports talk. I'm trying to make sports talk, reporting, etc., great again, or good again, whatever it is. So let's see what we got here. Thank you, man. Nike, I appreciate that. I appreciate you. And of course, my guy, James. See, I see what you did there. I keep it real, which also leads to my Reels rants. Didn't I put that on my banner here? Before I bid adieu, I know the Mets are on, the games are my Reels, rants, and critique videos. That's what it's all about. Because again, if I'm just going to be vanilla, if I'm just going to be bland, if I'm just going to say, like for instance, and I posted a comment here. Was it Bio that just posted this? Hold on a sec. Oh, no, yeah. Luka should not have been ejected last night. And you know what? And I mentioned that at the top. He should not have. That comment was directed toward the fan. I get it. It was in direction of the referee, and the ref thought he was talking to him, so therefore he got teed up. And we touched on that earlier, and right, he did not deserve to be ejected. But that's like me coming out and saying, oh, well, he deserved to be ejected all along. That was directed toward the ref. You saw that he was looking at him, talking at him. I know the ref was behind him, or the heckler was behind him, but yeah, that was 100% directed toward him. Come on, seriously? Now, if I'm going to come out and say that, or if I came out with a piece of content that's going to say, Luka deserved to be ejected, look what he said to the ref, of course, everybody's going to click on it, click, 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 click. But again, there's no base on that. You can see that the fan was behind him. You can see that he's been jawing at him. And I understand Luka's reputation with the refs are awful. He's always bickering. He's always complaining. He's always his arms up. He's always touching his forearms, etc. I understand. But that, come on. And I'm not about that. So now that I made this all about me, and I know I don't want to go there in that regard, but I appreciate you listening with all that. But with that said, again, my reels, rants, critique, your thoughts. I know Nike does what I do, and or see what I did there, James, with the reels. Absolutely. Again, it's why I quit my job. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's why I'm trying to blaze a path and a trail in this business. And, oh, God, what is this? Hucker McGill? I know Tyler McGill started the Mets 2-0, had more walks than strikeouts. Yeah, he's one of those guys, I know. And he has a live arm. I like him, but he scares me. Now, again, this is why I'm doing why I'm doing what I'm doing, people, and it's just to continue with your help. And this is why I thank you guys and gals for hopping on board to chime in, to share your thoughts, to go in on what's happening here in the toy department of life, as I like to say, the wonderful world of sports. And I do want to mix this up a little bit more as we move it along, and I promise I'll close out on this note. And again, thank you so much for carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say. And I know I've gone, an hour and 20 minutes already, which is, listen, I can go on 2, 3, 4 hours. As long as you're still with me, you know I appreciate you guys and gals. But I'll land it this way. Because I love what I do, because I share with you all, and I will continue to do that, and your support unwavering, and you know I'm beyond indebted to you guys. and appreciate you guys. You know that. But it's just a matter of me just wanting to make a mark on this particular platform, in this space and universe of podcasting or live streaming, etc., because I believe with the way the sports climate has been, it's all about clickbait. It's all about who yells the most. It's all about who's going to be animated or all those different things. And there was a video that came out recently that I'm actually I want to critique it, but I'm actually going to critique it in the positive side from a guy named June Lee, who was on ESPN. I believe he did like the Around the Horns and things of that nature, a young guy, and how he was let go of ESPN not too long ago. And he was talking about the issues about sports media. And I thought it was a brilliant video. And maybe what I could do is, let me see if I could, real quick, if I could copy and paste this in the chat room, just so you can see for yourself. To me, this was a fascinating video, and I'm with him because I truly believe that with the way the climate has been over the last half decade, and I get it, there's more people like me that are out there that are trying to do the same thing, and kudos to them. And it's not just me. I'm not God's gift to sports talk by any stretch. But at the same time, I want more people that are going to be true to themselves and true to their work, as opposed to just say whatever, or, oh, this is my channel, I can do what I want. All right, fine. But nobody's going to take you seriously if you're going to come out with something that's out of left field. But as I pull this up, and I'll post this in the room, and maybe you get a chance to watch this after I close this out, and I promise that once I finish talking about this, I'll say my goodbyes and move it along. Here it is. Well, this is just a segment of it. June Lee, here we go. Let me see if I can copy this link from here. Share, copy link. Fantastic. Check this out as I close out here. Comments? Here we go. Taking forever. Again, I'm still even trying to navigate this. Here's the YouTube link. And check that out, or copy and paste it on your browser or on your phone if you're watching on your phone. Check that out, and you'll get a sense as to the type of content that I've been putting out and I want to continue to put out, etc. And you'll get a better idea as to this is why I do this. Because thankfully, with technology and the way it is in this day and age, I can be heard. And I thank you. I'm going to thank you forever, people. I know you're going to be, oh, all right, J-Real, shut up. But this is the reason why I do what I do. And that video really will encapsulate how I feel. Share my referral link. What is this? Oh, I got to level up. That's fine. Oh, that's where it's StreamYard. So with that being said, people, I've stopped babbling. I promise this is it. For the last time, thank you so much for stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what goes on in sports. And I will mix it up a little bit more, probably add a different element, which we'll touch on at that time. And if you haven't subscribed, for those who are watching the replay, please do so. I would appreciate it, as I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm just past 600 right now. 1,000 is that threshold where I can start to monetize. So please, if you could do so here on the channel at J-Reels, I would sincerely appreciate it. And of course, if you want to hit me up with any questions, comments, suggestions, any of the following social media accounts, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the J-Reels Podcast, or J-Reels on Instagram, Twitter, J-Reels1, just a number, the old-fashioned way, by email, the jreelspodcast@gmail.com. Of course, the podcast coming out tomorrow, more NBA, the Masters, golf, baseball, recap the college basketball game a little bit. I know it's 3 days old or 2 days old by now, but still, anything that's happening in sports, you know I got you covered. And, of course, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, whichever platform, or, of course, on YouTube at J-Reels. Because whether you do or do not know, and I'm sure you guys do know, it's in the blood, it's in the DNA. Talking sports is birth. This is what I love to do, people. I can't emphasize it and stress it enough, as I already have done over the last hour plus. So with that being said, people, you know, as long as I'm sitting in front of this microphone and camera, I will continue to deliver nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on one of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the J-Reels live stream always comes live, direct, correct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, God bless everybody. And until next Wednesday on the live stream, and of course the podcast tomorrow on the Flip, baby.